Well guys, it's time to say goodbye to the Mother Merit Collard plant. If you've been following along, then you already know this plant has survived and thrived for several years in this garden. This was started by a single seed, perennialized here on site, and has given off dozens and dozens of cuttings. Each one of the tips from this plant and the lateral growth shoots can all be propagated from cutting, and I've literally dotted my entire landscape now with exact clones of the mother plant, and they're all doing extremely well. There's 3 plants right here growing on the edge of a hugelkultur. There's a smaller one popping up there at the base of that apple tree, a nice one growing in the chicken run, and several smaller ones dotted throughout the landscape that have yet to fully mature. I was also able to pull some really nice seeds off of this plant and offered those to some of the viewers here on the channel. And even though this plant is sending out a bunch of new shoots, even out of this older, dry, woody stock here, look how huge this thing is. Productivity on this plant has slowed, as it is 5 years old now, which is quite old for any perennial collard or kale plant. And I'll be replacing it with a Violette de Bordeaux fig tree. So this is a dwarf fig tree, only getting about 8 feet tall, and it produces medium-sized black purplish figs. And I've heard nothing but good things about this variety, so I'm really excited to get this going. So this is pretty common, but recently we've been getting a lot of late season frost and freezing weather conditions in my area. And that can be really hard on some of these trees that are already coming out of dormancy, producing blooms. But fig trees are one of my favorite fruit trees to grow. They do very well around here, in part because they remain dormant until later in the season, and because of that they don't get affected by these cold snaps that can come in. I'm also able to yield heavy crops from these trees, which adds to our total poundage of food that we produce on this property. So the Violette de Bordeaux will be the 4th variety of fig I'll be growing back here, and I think it's going to really love its new home. I think the best way to do this is to take it down in large sections. That way the cuttings that I do pull off of this will remain fresh for as long of a period as possible in between the time I take this out and pot those up. I'm going to actually need to get a saw to take this out. Now I really like to use my silky fine tooth saw when I'm doing pruning on my fruit trees to get a nice clean cut. But for this project, seeing as this whole plant is coming out, a larger tooth saw is good, and I really like this Wicked hand saw. So you can see that also leaves a pretty clean cut. And I think I might actually leave that trunk around the edge there. It makes a nice natural looking border, nice remembrance of the Merit Collard. But I'll also be moving that tree trunk there. It's just standing there. I've been using it as a table, hold my drink, or to cut open fruits and vegetables when I'm out here in the garden. Placement of this tree. So this fig tree left unpruned is going to naturally have about an 8-foot spread, so 4 foot in either direction, which is about right. That'll bring us right up to this aronia berry plant, and it'll come out this way just into the pathway if I don't trim it back, so this will be perfect. So when it comes to planting fig trees, I've never had to do anything too special. I mean, you can get as fancy as you want with it, but basically dig a hole about 3 times the size of the actual pot that the plant came in. This pot is actually much larger than the actual root ball of the plant. They had just placed it in here so the roots had a place to grow out. So I don't have to dig that big of a hole. And I'll be adding in some amendments. I'm going to be using actually this product called Amend, but some compost, something with some good nutrition in it. That's just about it. Put a nice mulch layer around it. So really easy. Soil is already looking so good after years of mulching. It's like cake. And it wasn't always like this. There was a lot of clay, a lot of weeds, a lot of debris. I'm seeing worms in here. The roots are going to have no problem escaping out of this hole that I'm making. I'm not worried there. And you can see worms all throughout the soil. Sorry guys. And if anything, I tend to dig my holes a little shallow and mound up a bit above the surface. Just helps to aid with the drainage, and over time allows for the tree to settle a little bit. Some of the very first fruit trees that I'd planted in this project, I planted flush with the ground level, and some of them sunk down a few inches, and I'd wish that I'd maybe done what I'm talking about here and just brought it up a little bit. So that's why I do that. Just gonna incorporate this amendment into the native soil. That way we don't create a natural potting situation. Although with figs, that's not something you're gonna have to worry about too much. Their roots are rather vigorous and will find a way out for sure. This is still a good practice, a good start. All right, now that that's good and mixed up, let's pull some of that out. So here's what I was talking about. Here's about the size of the root ball, not this whole pot. Place our tree in the hole. See, that would be too deep. Level's about right here. So I want it about right there. Pretty good about there. You can always adjust it again once you've got it backfilled. You can lift up on it a little bit. Some of that soil from the pot in there too. Looking really good. And I'll water this in really good. By doing so, we'll also eliminate any air pockets that may be in there. You don't want air pockets. That can cause some root dieback. I'm not a big fan of stepping around the plant too much and causing too much compaction, but I'll do it just a little bit, just tamper it down a little bit in order to make sure we got the tree situated the way we want, nice and parallel. And tamping it in like that is another example of how you lose a little bit of that height, which is why it is a good idea to plant a little bit high. Any type of mulch is good. I've got the wood chips in abundance, so that's what I'm going to use. This also has a mix of pine needles and other things in there. This is mostly pine chips actually. I'd say I put about 5 inches or so of wood chips. And I'm also going to water in the wood chips really good. And you don't need to much worry if some of those wood chips go onto the trunk of the tree. There's a lot of airflow in these chips, unlike with soil. so you don't have to worry about it, causing like trunk rot. You don't want to make it too dramatic, but this is going to also break down and sink down rather quickly, so don't be too concerned if you go up a few inches on the trunk. And it's that easy. In just a matter of minutes, we've got ourselves another perennial fruit tree established in this backyard food forest. And it's customary of me when I put a new plant in the garden to welcome it. So welcome to the food forest, Violette de Bordeaux. We're glad to have you. Wishing you health and abundance as part of this system. And now I've got several dozen cuttings that I'll be taking from that plant, and I've made several videos in the past showing how I go about doing that, so rather than include it on this video, I'll put a link below in the description box if you want to check that out. So thanks a lot for tuning in today, everybody, and until next time, this is Dan from plantabundance.com, wishing you all a great rest of your weekend. I'll be talking to you again soon. Take care.